The Buddy Holly mystery, finally solved, and it's worse than we thought. The Buddy Holly plane crash stands as one of music's most intriguing mysteries that still raises questions after more than 6 decades. A chartered plane went down on February 3, 1959, minutes after leaving Mason City, Iowa. Rock and roll pioneers Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, J.P. Richardson, known as the Big Bopper, and pilot Roger Peterson lost their lives in the crash. The flight lasted only 4 minutes before crashing on its way to Fargo, North Dakota. Don McLean's 1971 song, American Pie, later immortalized this tragic day as the day the music died. The official story points to an inexperienced pilot who made mistakes in challenging weather conditions, but many people still ask questions about what really brought down Buddy Holly's plane. The Civil Aeronautics Board's ruling on September 23, 1959, blamed the pilot who lacked proper certification for instrument-guided flight and received poor weather information. A new petition by pilot L.J. Kuhn suggests that significant information about the flight never made it into the original 1959 report. Music fans continue to visit the crash site just north of Clear Lake, Iowa. They come to pay respects and search for answers about these fallen rock pioneers. The truth behind one of music's greatest tragedies might finally come to light as we get into the facts surrounding the Buddy Holly plane crash. NTSB receives petition to reopen Buddy Holly crash case. A new chapter in the Buddy Holly controversy emerged more than 5 decades after the tragic crash. L.J. Kuhn, a New England pilot, sent an unusual petition to the National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, in early 2015. He wanted federal safety investigators to take another look at what caused Buddy Holly's plane to crash. The petition challenged the 1959 findings that blamed 21-year-old pilot Roger Peterson for the accident. Kuhn believed this conclusion wasn't fair to Peterson, who died with the 3 musicians. Roger would have flown out and about this airport at night under multiple different conditions. He had to be very familiar with all directions of this airport in and out, Kuhn told the Pilot Tribune. The petition offered different theories about the Buddy Holly plane crash cause. Kuhn suggested Peterson might have spotted trouble and tried to glide the aircraft into an open field. The pilot lost control when the rudder pedals failed. He asked investigators to think over several other factors that could explain the disaster. The aircraft's weight balance. Peterson and Holly up front weighed about 160 kilos each, while Valens and Richardson were much heavier. New flight instruments that could have confused the pilot. Possible passenger disturbance right after takeoff. Concerns about fuel gauge readings and carburetor icing. All of my efforts and the NTSB's investigation could possibly save the lives of today's and future pilots, Kuhn said about his petition. His request challenged the original findings on 12 specific points. He wanted to clear Peterson's name and improve aviation safety. The NTSB responded carefully. "You have gotten our attention," they wrote in their reply. An NTSB spokesperson later explained, "We haven't reopened the investigation. We have received a petition for reconsideration and are in the process of reviewing the petition to determine if it meets the criteria for submission." These petitions don't come often. NTSB data shows they receive less than 10 petitions a year, and less than 50% of them meet the criteria for further investigation. Agency rules say petitions need new evidence or proof that the board made a mistake in determining the probable cause. Media reports about the NTSB possibly reopening the case prompted the agency to explain their process. NTSB spokesman Eric Weiss said the agency never officially closes cases, but takes 2 months to review accident investigation petitions. Terry Williams from the NTSB added they were reviewing a petition asking us to consider reopening the investigation, and this could take several months. The case stood out because the Civil Aeronautics Board, which no longer exists, did the original investigation. The NTSB needed to check if anything significant was missed the first time the investigation was done. Media reports showed excitement about reopening the Buddy Holly plane crash investigation. The results disappointed those wanting new answers. The NTSB officially rejected Kuhn's request on April 21, 2015. They said the evidence wasn't enough to revisit the original investigation's findings. Kuhn didn't accept this outcome. Records showed the NTSB looked at letters from January 15th and February 10th, 2015. This made Kuhn wonder if they had really studied his complete 24-page petition from February 19th. He voiced his concerns and said, "This accident has truly gone unsolved for 56 years. The petition's rejection added another layer to the ongoing questions about the Buddy Holly crash site and the deaths of 3 innovative rock and roll stars. People still want the full story about the accident, showing how deeply this event remains in America's cultural memory." L.J. Kuhn challenges official crash explanation. A deeper look at the Buddy Holly controversy shows L.J. Kuhn's petition paints a picture nowhere near as simple as the initial investigation suggested. Kuhn, who describes himself as a retired pilot, aircraft dispatcher, and Federal Aviation Administration test proctor from New England, challenged several parts of the official story about what caused Buddy Holly's plane to crash. Kuhn questions pilot error theory. Kuhn's main challenge stems from his belief that people have unfairly blamed 21-year-old pilot Roger Peterson for decades. He disputes the official verdict of pilot inexperience and disorientation, arguing that Peterson knew the Mason City Airport well under different conditions, which makes the standard explanation unlikely. Roger would have flown out and about this airport at night under multiple different conditions. He had to be very familiar with all directions of this airport in and out, Kuhn told the Pilot Tribune. Peterson's record showed 4 years and over 700 hours of flight experience. This made it hard to believe he could fail so badly moments into what should have been a routine flight. Kuhn looked beyond the story that Peterson simply flew a shallow dive into the ground while mistakenly thinking he was climbing. He wanted to find other explanations for the Buddy Holly plane crash cause. Claims rudder pedal malfunction may be key. Kuhn's investigation zeroed in on the aircraft's rudder system as a prime suspect in the Buddy Holly death ordeal. His petition specifically asked whether control problems happened because of broken right-side rudder pedals. He came up with an interesting theory about how passengers and pilot might have interacted. Holly sat in the front passenger seat, and if he turned left to talk to the rear passengers, his foot could have accidentally hit the right rudder pedal. This unexpected movement would have made the plane veer sideways, forcing Peterson to fight for control while already dealing with tough flying conditions. The theory gains strength from the fact that mechanics sometimes removed the Bonanza's pedal completely because it sat so close to the passenger seat, exactly to prevent such accidents. A possible right rudder vader failure plays a big part in his analysis. Suggests Peterson attempted emergency landing. The evidence points to something more than just losing control and crashing. Kuhn believes Peterson fought bravely to save the aircraft and everyone on board during those final moments. I believe that the NTSB will review pilot Peterson's diagnostic actions in the aircraft during this 3.5-minute flight and realize the heroic efforts that took place in those 4.9 miles, Kuhn stated. Kuhn's research suggests Peterson tried to glide the single-engine plane down for an emergency landing just before its right wing hit the ground. The original Aeronautics Board's investigation found that the right wing struck the ground with only a slightly lowered nose, which showed that some control was being affected at the time. Kuhn listed several other factors that might have played a role in the Buddy Holly plane crash. Aircraft weight and balance calculations for passengers, baggage, and fuel. Possible carburetor icing issues that could have affected engine performance. Questionable fuel gauge readings that might have misled the pilot. Weight distribution issues. Peterson and Holly up front weighed about 160 kilos each, while Valens and Richardson were much heavier. New flight instruments that could have confused the pilot. Possible passenger movement shortly after takeoff. Kuhn's detailed challenge to the official explanation tries to change the story of the Buddy Holly crash site tragedy. He sees it not as pilot error, but as mechanical failure combined with a pilot's brave attempt to save lives against impossible odds. All of my efforts and the NTSB's investigation could possibly save the lives of today's and future pilots. Kuhn emphasized showing his goal went beyond correcting history to improving aviation safety. What caused Buddy Holly's plane to crash, according to 1959 report? The official 1959 Civil Aeronautics Board investigation into the Buddy Holly plane crash gave a clear picture of what they believed caused the fatal accident. Modern investigations might look at multiple factors that contributed to a crash. But the CAB's conclusion was simple. The pilot's unwise decision to embark on a flight which would necessitate flying solely by instruments when he was not properly certificated or qualified to do so. Pilot lacked instrument rating. Roger Peterson had logged 711 flying hours with 128 hours in Bonanza aircraft. His qualifications had major limitations, though. He had completed 52 hours of instrument flight training and passed the written test, but failed an instrument check ride 9 months before the accident. He wasn't qualified to fly using only instruments. Peterson and Dwyer Flying Service could only operate under Visual Flight Rules VFR. These rules meant the pilot needed to see where the aircraft was going. Something impossible in that night's weather. Looking at all these facts, the CAB investigation noted that the decision to go seems most imprudent. Weather conditions were severe. The weather on February 3, 1959, turned out way more dangerous than what Peterson was told. When taking off from Mason City Municipal Airport, the ceiling had dropped to 3,000 feet with an obscured sky. Visibility was 6 miles in light snow. The winds blew at 20 knots and gusted up to 30. Peterson never got 2 vital weather warnings. A flash report from Minneapolis about areas with visibility less than 2 miles in snow. A Kansas City advisory about freezing drizzle and icing across much of Iowa. Bruce Landsberg, executive director of the Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association's Air Safety Foundation, put it well. The weather is what you see, not what the forecast is. The weather briefing Peterson got was seriously inadequate and failed to even mention adverse weather conditions, which should have been highlighted. Once in the air, the pilot faced what the CAB called an area of complete darkness and one in which there was no definite horizon. Light snow was falling, Snow was blowing across the runway, and the sparsely populated region had no ground lights. This made visual navigation almost impossible. Aircraft had outdated flight instruments. The plane's instrumentation played a vital role in the Buddy Holly plane crash cause. The Beechcraft Bonanza, built in October 1947, came well equipped for its time with multiple radios and a full panel. The autopilot had been installed recently but wasn't working during the flight. The plane's Sperry 3 attitude gyroscope was very different from the instruments Peterson knew. The KB found that Peterson's instrument training used conventional artificial horizons. The Sperry F3 showed pitch attitude information in the opposite way. This meant Peterson might have thought he was going up when he was actually heading down while using the older Sperry F3 gyroscope. The cab investigation found this reverse sensing would at times produce reverse control action. The disoriented pilot fought through gusty winds and turbulence that made the instruments fluctuate. The cab determined that the aircraft hit the ground at high speed while banking steeply right with its nose pointing down. This matched the actions of a pilot who thought he was doing something completely different. New evidence raises doubts about crash mechanics. L.J. Kuhn's technical analysis goes beyond the original petition that challenged the official crash explanation. The retired pilot's investigation presents compelling evidence about the Buddy Holly plane crash cause. His findings suggest alternative mechanical explanations that question whether pilot error alone caused the Buddy Holly death incident. Weight and balance calculations resurface. The biggest problem with the official report involves the aircraft's weight distribution. Kuhn emphasizes a crucial imbalance. Peterson and Holly sat in the front seats and weighed about 160 pounds each. Valens and Richardson, who sat in the rear, were much heavier. This uneven distribution could have made the aircraft harder to handle, especially during takeoff. The NTSB should review the weight and balance calculations for passengers' baggage and fuel as potential factors that contributed to the crash. The weight distribution might have made the aircraft more difficult to control, whatever the pilot's skill level. The original investigators didn't get a full picture of the weight and balance of the plane, how it was loaded with passengers' baggage and fuel, all of which could have influenced performance. They blamed the crash on pilot error without looking at how these mechanical factors affected the aircraft. Fuel system and carburetor icing theories emerge. The mechanical state of the aircraft is the lifeblood of Kuhn's challenge. His petition points to possible carburetor induction icing as a key factor investigators should look into. Yes, it is worth noting that Kuhn challenging the findings on 12 points that include the possibility that its carburetor was clogged with ice. Ice buildup in the carburetor might have caused engine power loss or erratic performance right after takeoff. This mechanical failure explains why an experienced pilot who knew the airport well couldn't keep control. There's another reason to look at fuel gauge readings. Wrong fuel gauge information could have misled Peterson about how much fuel he had. This faulty data might have affected his decisions during the short flight. Kuhn presents aircraft diagnostics to NTSB. Detailed aircraft diagnostics are at the heart of Kuhn's petition. These findings suggest mechanical failure rather than human error. He asked investigators to review pilot Peterson's diagnostic actions in the aircraft during this 3.5-minute flight and realize the heroic efforts that took place in those 4.9 miles. His analysis reveals that Peterson might have faced mechanical problems right after takeoff and tried to make an emergency landing. Kuhn hypothesizes that Peterson tried to glide the single-engine plane for an emergency landing before the plane's right wing hit the ground. The petition looks at the plane's rate of climb and descent to support this emergency landing theory. He questions possible issues with rudder panels that might have affected control. The petition also raises concerns about the possible absence of a passenger-side rudder pedal. This technical detail hints at non-standard aircraft configuration that the original investigation missed. The NTSB's response, "You have gotten our attention," acknowledged the petition's technical merit. As the Buddy Holly controversy shows, the agency needed 2 months to decide if Kuhn's evidence justified reopening the investigation. NTSB responds to petition with cautious interest. The National Transportation Safety Board's response to L.J. Kuhn's petition became a turning point in the ongoing Buddy Holly controversy. It sparked new hope for people who wanted answers about what caused Buddy Holly's plane to crash. The federal agency showed openness to a fresh look at the case after Kuhn submitted his detailed analysis that challenged the original findings. Agency says, "You have our attention." The NTSB's February 19, 2015 email to Kuhn made headlines with a simple yet powerful message: "You have gotten our attention." They promised to get into the information he provided. This response turned heads because the Buddy Holly plane crash happened 56 years ago. The NTSB's response carried extra weight because they rarely look back at closed investigations. NTSB spokesman Eric Weiss put it this way: "Our cases are never closed, and we get these from time to time." All the same, their decision to involve themselves with Kuhn's petition suggested his theories about the Buddy Holly plane crash cause might have merit. Criteria for reopening cases explained. The NTSB laid out specific standards to decide if they should launch a formal reinvestigation. Agency representatives made it clear the biggest factor would be if there is new information not previously considered by the board. The agency took an unusual step by sharing the original Civil Aeronautics Board's accident report on Twitter. They included details about what it takes to warrant a new investigation. 2 main criteria emerged: finding new evidence that wasn't available during the original investigation, showing how the original findings could be wrong based on new analysis. The official process requires a petition for reconsideration or modification under Federal Regulation 49 CFR 8451. The NTSB receives requests to look at old plane crashes 8 or 9 times a year. The Buddy Holly death case stood out not just because of its cultural impact, but also its age, making it unique even among cold cases. Timeline for decision remains unclear. Public interest in the potential reopening grew, but the NTSB managed to keep their review process methodical. They first said a decision on whether to reopen the case could take several weeks. Later, communications pointed to a much longer timeline. The agency created a 2-phase evaluation. 1. They would respond to Kuhn's information in about 2 months. 2. The final decision on granting the petition could take up to a year. This extended schedule showed how complex it would be to evaluate a 56-year-old investigation and assess Kuhn's theories about the Buddy Holly crash site. NTSB spokesman Eric Weiss stayed cautious, saying they haven't reopened the investigation, but were simply in the process of reviewing the petition to determine if it meets the criteria for submission. The NTSB's response mixed encouragement with careful regulatory procedure. Their "You have our attention" statement grabbed headlines and renewed interest in the Buddy Holly controversy. Yet they stuck to their protocols for possibly revisiting one of aviation's most notorious accidents. Survivors and near misses recall chilling moments. The Buddy Holly plane crash shows how fate can turn on the smallest decisions. Survivors' accounts paint a picture of chance encounters and split-second choices that drew the line between life and death. Waylon Jennings gives up his seat. Jennings played bass for Holly on the Winter Dance Party tour when Richardson, the Big Bopper, approached him. Richardson battled the flu and traded places with Jennings to take his seat on the plane. This led to a conversation that would echo through music history. Holly teased Jennings before takeoff. "Well, I hope your damn bus freezes up." Jennings shot back, "Well, I hope your old plane crashes." Those words haunted Jennings throughout his life. "God Almighty, for years I thought I caused it," he later revealed in a CMT interview. "I was afraid someone would discover what I said," he shared. "The guilt of being alive weighed heavily on me." Tommy Allsup loses coin toss to Valens. A simple coin flip determined guitarist Tommy Allsup's destiny. Valens, who once had a fear of flying, asked Allsup for his seat on the plane. The two agreed to toss a coin to decide. Bob Hale, that night's disc jockey MC, flipped the coin backstage. Valens won the coin toss for the seat on the flight. "That's the first time I've ever won anything in my life," Valens said. People mistakenly listed Allsup among the victims because he had given his wallet and ID to Holly. His lucky escape gave him an additional 57 years and 11 months. Dion DiMucci recounts alternate version. Dion DiMucci tells a different story about that night. Unlike Allsup's and Jennings's accounts, Dion has since said that Holly approached him along with Valens and Richardson to join the flight, not Holly's bandmates. Dion recalls, "When he said 36 cylinders, a light went off in my head because my father paid that monthly for rent in the Bronx. Money, not chance, saved his life. I'm not going to spend a whole month's rent just for a flight," he remembered thinking. He told Valens, "Please, you go on the plane. Take your coat, stay warm, I'll watch your guitars." The aftermath hit him hard, and he coped really well with a bottle of booze. He struggled alone with his grief. "There was nobody to talk to, and I was left to my own devices." Rumors and conspiracy theories refused to die. The Buddy Holly controversy has sparked many conspiracy theories that live on decades after the tragic crash. People keep debating what caused Buddy Holly's plane to crash, even though most alternative explanations lack solid proof. Gun found at crash site. A farmer made an unexpected discovery 2 months after the Buddy Holly plane crash. He found a .22 caliber pistol near the wreckage that supposedly belonged to Holly. This discovery led some people to speculate about an accidental discharge during the flight. Of course, this theory became popular among those who didn't accept the CIAB's official findings. Some conspiracy theorists point to a local newspaper report claiming 2 chambers of the 6-shooter were empty when found. It also mentions an unidentified witness who claimed to see a bullet hole through the pilot's seat's back. All the same, nobody has ever found real evidence of a gun firing during that fatal flight. Was there a struggle on board? Some alternative theories suggest chaos inside the plane. One idea revolves around Holly and Richardson trying to switch seats during the flight. This speculation comes from the way the victims were thrown from the plane, which looked very different from what experts expected. L.J. Kuhn came up with another reason for the crash. He speculates that Holly might have twisted left to look at rear passengers and accidentally hit the right rudder pedal with his foot. This could have made the plane veer sideways. His theory explains the mechanical problems without putting blame on the pilot. Big Bopper's exhumation debunks foul play. J. Richardson wanted to learn about persistent rumors in 2007. He had his father's body, the Big Bopper, exhumed and checked by famous forensic anthropologist Dr. William Bass. The investigation aimed to address stories about gunfire on the plane and whether Richardson might have survived the initial impact. Bass's work proved these theories wrong. There was no indication of foul play, Bass stated. His analysis showed massive fractures from head to toe and confirmed Richardson died immediately without trying to leave the wreckage. The Clear Lake Globe-Gazette predicted correctly. Speculation about the Buddy Holly death keeps going strong despite these findings. Why the Buddy Holly plane crash still haunts music history. The Buddy Holly plane crash remains etched in the collective memory, not just as a tragedy, but as a cultural turning point. It represents more than the loss of three talented musicians. It symbolizes the abrupt and violent end of rock and roll's innocent, exuberant first wave. Holly Valens and Richardson were not just stars. They were pioneers who were actively shaping the future of popular music. Their deaths left a creative void that can never be truly measured, freezing them in time as eternal symbols of unfulfilled potential. The enduring mystery surrounding the crash fuels its legendary status. The conflicting accounts, the tantalizing what-ifs of coin flips and surrendered seats, and the persistent challenges to the official narrative ensure the story is never fully settled. It has become a modern American myth, a cautionary tale of ambition, fate, and the high cost of a life lived on the road. Don McLean's American Pie elevated the incident from a news story to a poetic defining moment